Frumess talks about Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Let's all talk about Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Guys, we got Tabletop Bob is in the comments right here. Tabletop Bob, check out his channel. If you guys like Dungeons and Dragons and role play and things like that, Bob is always doing that stuff on his channel, and he is an avid YouTuber like myself. All right, we're on to, oh boy. Okay, so the two movies that I watch on Halloween. So for my Halloween watch, I always try to watch something that's really sort of a special, something that is premium. You know, nothing that's filler, nothing that's, you know, something that I'm going to thoroughly enjoy watching, because sometimes it can feel like a chore, right? Sometimes your horror watches, and that should never be the case. You should always watch stuff and enjoy watching it when you do. Like it shouldn't feel like a chore. It should feel like pure enjoyment. But sometimes these movies can feel like a chore. But on Halloween, I always make sure I got to pick out something that is just going to be a really fun, guaranteed fun watch. Because sometimes when you're watching something you've never seen before, you don't know what you're getting into. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what am I getting into? Case in point, we got The Blob. Now, we talked about horror remakes when we were talking about The Thing from Another World. And I'm going to reiterate that here because I know that eventually this is going to be its own review. The Blob, for me, is on the Mount Rushmore of all remakes, and particularly horror remakes, just the gold standard. You know, during this revisit of The Blob, I was just so blown away by the script, the story writing, the screenwriting in this retelling. It's written by Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont. You may know Frank Darabont. He did and would become a director in his own right. He did Shawshank Redemption, which everybody loves. He also brought us The Walking Dead. He adapted The Walking Dead from the comic to AMC, you know. He also delivered us The Mist, one of the most brutal adaptations of any of Stephen King's work, especially that ending, really ballsy ending that I don't think I've watched. Oh yeah, I've definitely watched it since becoming a dad, but that's a tough watch when you're a dad. The Blob remake is an example of a perfect screenplay. Perfect. If you want to like personify what should be taught in a screenwriting class, look no further than the Blob remake. So the original Blob is pretty sort of straightforward, right? You know, it lays a foundation for Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont. And remember, as I said, Chuck Russell is also the guy that directed The Mask a few years later. So it's kind of weird to think that, but it makes sense. When you think about it, it makes sense that the guy who directed The Mask would be making a movie like The Blob. They kind of overlap in that kind of way. Yes, I think The Blob it's just one of the great horror classics. Remake of the 1958 sci-fi horror film about a deadly blob, which is the spawn of a secret government germ warfare project, which consumes everyone in its path. Teenagers try in vain to warn the townsfolk, who refuse to take them seriously, while the government agents try to cover up the evidence and confine the creature. Now, everything I just said is not in the original at all. All of that stuff was added. The only thing that's in the original film is there's this unexplained, alien blob that eats people, and there are some teenagers that are trying to save the town from being eaten. And of course, the blob overtakes a movie theater, and that's really where the similarities end with the original Blob. Everything else that is mentioned in that synopsis is built on top of that foundation. And it's done in this very kind of Stephen Kingish way. And you could tell, again, Frank Darabont, he is a disciple of Stephen King. And when I mentioned before that, the screenwriting is pitch perfect. It's like, if Stephen King is a master of screenwriting, Frank Darabont is the student who has surpassed the master, along with Chuck Russell, of course. They wrote it together. They surpassed the master in this regard with the Blob. You have the town itself feels like its own character, and that's so essential when doing like a movie that's like kind of like an ensemble like this is. It's not necessarily that all the characters, you have Shawnee Smith, you have a bunch of in fact you have the guy who plays, he's in RoboCop, he plays one of the thugs that gets melted by the toxic waste at the end. You have a bunch of Darabont regulars. You have the guy who played Dale, Jeffrey, what's his name, Jeffrey DeMunn. And of course, you have a very young Kevin Dillon. And the movie has balls, man. The movie has such balls. It's friggin' it's so subversive in what it does. It makes us think that the football jock is going to be the hero, the main star. He's the Steve McQueen type character. And what do they do to him? They friggin' kill him off in the first act, man. And it's so gnarly. It's so brutal. His death is so disturbing and scary and shocking. It's something that you're not expecting at all. And then suddenly it's like you go, wait a minute. Kevin Dillon is actually going to be the hero. And it's just, man, it's great. It's just so great. Every character, there's so much care is put into the characters. Every character has some little kind of arc or completes some little kind of loop, that, or, there are all these things that are set up and paid off. The town is a snow town, and they have snowmakers, and it's not working, and it hasn't snowed in a long time. And that's gonna, be the thing that ends up saving the town at the end. So many people are established just so that they could be eaten by the Blob. The Blob is ruthless, man. Digesting everybody alive. Kids get eaten. I mean, it's really harrowing. You see this little boy get, sucked into sewer water and digested alive by the Blob. You see someone fall in the street and a Blob tentacle just comes down. I mean, I just literally could talk about this movie forever. The Blob is a perfect movie. It really, really is, from start to finish. And again, they add the element of, trying to explain what the Blob is. And the Blob is a germ warfare project that is out of control. Kind of interesting too, that, you have, you have a preacher. He takes it to be a sign of the end days. And he puts some Blob in a jar. And of course, we're left with that little epilogue that shows that someday when he decides that it's the end times, he is going to unleash the Blob again upon the world. And we never got the follow-up. I would have loved to see the apocalyptic Armageddon that the Blob would bring to the world. Just so many great scenes. I really, the whole setup with the condom, there's that whole condom scene. There's just, it's like the perfect setup for a joke that just gets paid off so well. It's God, my words fail to, fully describe how great this movie is, The Blob. I have the Scream Factory. When the Scream Factory version came out, I got that beautiful Blob poster. You can't really see it back there. And I just had it waiting in the shrink wrap, waiting for the day. I was like, it was like taking out a bottle of wine. Now is the time to watch The Blob. And that's exactly what I did. Yeah, just excellent. The special effects, and that's the other thing too. The special effects hold up so well when you realize that all the Blob is just like silk sheets with like this stuff called methylene, or it's like some Methicil. It's called Methicil. Actually, it's the same thing that you have in like McDonald's milkshakes. And that's what makes it look all shiny and slimy and gross. When you realize it's just silk and Methicil, it's amazing. The creativity. That's all Tony Gardner, who got his start on Return of the Living Dead, doing the Half Corpse and the Split Dogs. And now, I mean, Tony Gardner, who I had the pleasure, the honor of meeting fucking Tony Gardner. So funny too. I've told the story before. I was at the Sleepy Hollow International Film Festival, and I recognized Tony Gardner, and he was shocked that I knew who he was. He was shocked that anybody would like point him out, because, there were other people who were far more famous that were there, but I saw him and I was like, dude, fucking Tony Gardner. I got my picture taken with him, met his daughter. Really fucking nice guy. And just like, talk about a dude. That's the dude. I mean, he's done so many movies too. But The Blob stands out as being one of the best that he's done. I mean, just his work on that movie just holds up. That's from 1988. That movie is nearly 40 years old. It's pushing 40. And it looks spectacular, man. Spectacular. And again, you know, the other thing that's interesting about The Blob is so many people get eaten. They don't deserve it. Some people deserve it. Some people, like, you know, like I'm thinking about The Waitress. They're just some people that get consumed, and you're just kind of like, ah, man, they didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve to go that way, and yet they do. Not so much for others. So that's The Blob. If you've never seen The Blob, you must like click out of this video and go watch The Blob immediately. It is essential. It is essential viewing.